council to include a community benefits agreement. Even at this point right here, you have to amend and make an amendment to this right now to put in a community benefits agreement. It has to be. So that our people that are on Ward 1 are not overlooked. Council person Richardson and I have had discussions dealing with the other projects that are on the in the first ward area, and you were instrumental in, along with County Commissioner Jefferson, getting an organization that started that's called the African American Association Contractors of Washington County. We have one of our members present right here. So that if this does pass, that the workforce is not overlooked and it represents the community also. Also, the Spence Brothers representative right here. I'm a member of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. I'm a member of the National Electrical Contractors Association. I implore you to reach out and seek out persons that oftentimes are overlooked in the construction process. We do have an organization, we're up and running. So I've heard it said from one of the council members that said there weren't any construction workers in a city of 20,000. That's not true. We have construction workers, we have construction contractors right here that can do the work locally if it passed. Don't look over us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. David Carlin, and up next will be Amanda Mayer.
Shane McFarland, 12 North Wallace Boulevard. Thanks everyone for hanging out this evening. I know someone who's actually bringing me some snacks later, so if you're looking for food, keep an eye on. So I wanted to reiterate what the person who was up here earlier mentioned about the EB-5 visa program. To be clear, what we are doing is we are selling green cards to rich people to fund this program. That's what we're doing. Like, if that is the moral dilemma to even start this process. That you have to agree to do that, and I'm asking that you don't do that. I think that we need to stay strong in our ethics and our morality in terms of not prioritizing rich immigrants over poor ones. And it's hard to turn down money, but values are more important than money. That's all there is to it. I believe in the presentation you said that everyone was welcome, which is, come on, everyone is welcome. Like, it's not a free place. It's not a place where anyone can go. And without the discussion of affordable housing, even with affordable housing, still not everyone is welcome from a financial standpoint. A lot of the affordable housing developments still have ridiculous requirements, credit check requirements. They have, sometimes they even have income requirements as well. So it's a lie, it's a sales pitch to say that everyone is welcome. And obviously that's what he's here to do. So please remain skeptical of that. Also, you mentioned that they're not here to make money off of IPSI, but then simultaneously said that this is an investment that the investors are excited about because it's a very stable investment, which means it's going to make a lot of money. So clearly, there's some doublespeak happening. So we just want to point that out, that everything isn't as it seems, and this is a sales pitch to pull the wool over everyone's eyes, so we can just keep this process going without any skeptical thought. Thank you.
Thank you. And Amber Fellows and Isaac Levine.
Hello, I'm Amanda Mayer. I live at 514 West Cross Street, and I would like to say that I want there to be development on the Water Street property, and I want it to be for the people of Ypsilanti. I don't want development for the sake of development, because development is very often, especially rush development, is very often a force of gentrification. And this dissent is not out of xenophobia, but out of concern for the residents currently here, including myself, about the affordability of Ypsilanti. I have not heard any commitment to the affordability of International Village to Ypsilanti residents. We need to consider who International Village is for. How will we, as the people of Ypsilanti, be ensured that this development will be for the citizens that need housing the most and not just for people who can afford higher rent? I want for you, City Council, to vote no tonight in order for us as a community to have more of a say in what is built on the Water Street property and who is developing the property. If the people of International Village want to develop the land for the people of Ypsilanti, they can propose another agreement that sits well with the people of Ypsilanti. We recently passed the millage so that we as a community could lift ourselves out of debt and have a say in what is built there. If we are going to lift the property out of debt, then the land should be benefiting the citizens living here and not rich foreign investors that don't know Ypsilanti. It seems very disrespectful to the people of Ypsilanti to try to slip this under our noses right after we decided to try to fix this problem ourselves. Whatever is built there should be for the people paying to relieve the debt and not people who have no investment in bettering Ypsi other than for their own gains. I understand the rush on this, but the people of Ypsilanti will not be rushed by outsiders who don't know our needs. Think of this delay in the vote as part of your float period for your development if we allowed it to happen.
Thank you. Amber Fellows, next. And after that, Margaret Powell.
Amber Fellows, 300 Jarvis. So the money is going to International Village, which means it will go out of our community and out of the country. The money coming to our community will be negligible in comparison. So developers, I urge you to watch the video from the public hearing last night. It's on YouTube. It will give you a taste of what you should expect to face if you enter this purchase agreement. Quick questions. What does permanent job mean? Who would regulate that? I also echo Nathaniel when he says, none of you asked about affordability. And why did you not ask about how much these units are going to cost? How much are the condos going to cost? All right, what the heck? Basic questions. Will there be units geared towards non-student adults? The reason why people are outraged is because this process hasn't been transparent at all. If you had more public input, town halls, informational interviewing, etc., folks would be arriving to where we are now tonight with much more of an idea of what is going on and with a lot less anger. It is a huge red flag that we are where we are tonight. We had to fight to get heard for one night, and one night is not enough to talk about a project of this scale. I gotta debunk the purchase agreement thing. What exactly do you think our council and city staff could draft up between now and the development agreement that would be acted on in good faith? The community benefits agreement isn't written yet. There is no way that council and city staff could come up with a substantial community benefits agreement that includes residents that are affected by these issues we've been talking about the last 2 nights. I have very little faith in our city staff that would be assigned to this task. The CBA isn't written. How can you say that a developer will hold to a CBA's guidelines if the policy isn't written? So if you're saying that, if we ask for unicorns in the CBA, will we get unicorns? That is the problem here. There is so much misleading going on. And I believe, and believe me, I've been to council, planning, accounting meetings this past year. I've attended these meetings. I know the difference between how this process functions on paper and how it functions in practice. The mayor, city staff, and council will ask for concessions to appeal to the outrage tonight and maybe granted some minor changes, but it will not be the substantial community benefits agreement that Ypsilanti deserves. I've heard from the developer that EB-5 visa investors are at risk. This is a pretty insulting thing to hear you say, as if you're supposed to relate to this risk. Let me paint you another picture about at-risk story. Council, no matter what happens tonight, if the development is voted down, You will be able to leave tonight to the security of your home, see your families and loved ones, and sleep knowing that you'll be safe and have the opportunity to work on another development another day. If you vote this proposal through, you will also go back to the security of your home and sleep easy. But those of us that are not homeowners will go home and not and feel the unease as we try to sleep that we will be at risk for losing our homes soon.
Thank you so much. Passes forward, so please hold your applause. Isaac Levine, you're next. Next up after that is Margaret Turner, and then Kyle Hunter.
Hi, my name is Isaac Levine. Sorry, I didn't mean to say it like that. It's okay to call me Levine. I take both. It's cool. I'm being weird. So yeah, last night we had this insanely amazing public input meeting that Defend Affordable IPSI has uploaded to YouTube. I really suggest checking it out. 40 people came and talked. And it was really special to see. I heard a lot of sides of this issue that I had no idea about. 30 people came out in skepticism and hoping to slow down the development or say no to it. 9 people came out with like a solid yes. And 1 person came out to tell us that being a Hare Krishna is really awesome. So that was something. Yeah, so I would just like to thank everyone that came out last night. I'm not against development, I'm really not. I really am against development that isn't transparent, and I think there's still an opportunity for it to be really transparent. I think it was pretty wild that the Human Relations Commission had to fight tooth and nail to get last night's meeting. See how many people showed up yesterday and showed up today, and that members of the city council didn't even know about the trip to China until the public did. I mean, it's all really strange to me, and it was all very quick, and I'm reiterating things that have already been said, but I think it's pretty fishy. So I am just going to reiterate a request that was made by 30 separate community speakers last night that I urge you to vote no or abstain from voting on the purchase agreement today since an adequate community benefits agreement has not been written. I don't think the purchase agreement is non-bonding. It was not quite bonding, was the words. Binding, so I think that sounds kind of binding to me. If it's not binding. If you said, oh no, it's not binding, I would just think something different right now. So you have this trip to China coming up, and maybe it's all effed up if you vote no, and you don't get the chance to do this planning agreement. But what I think is if you vote no, you get a chance to draft a community benefits agreement with them in China. You get a chance to get this period to put this all together. Yeah, so I still, again, urge you to vote no or abstain. You were talking at the affordability last week about how many city council members in Ann Arbor lost their seats in city council over the library lot issue, people that voted for the library lot. I think that if you vote yes on this development at this time, you will be on the wrong side of history, it will be remembered, and your seat will likely be lost due to it not serving public interest. So I urge you to vote no or abstain. I don't say that to kill the development. I just think that if they're not going to be fulfilling needs, if we are, snowflakes or unicorns for asking for low-income housing, then this is not the project for us. So please vote no or abstain today. Go to China with the intention of listening, hearing, and building a relationship that maybe could be used. But I don't think the purchase agreement should be established at that point. I think that's a binding agreement. Thank you.
And after Margaret is going to be Kyle Hunter.
Is that over? Good evening, I'm Margaret Harner. I am one of the co-founders of the Washtenaw Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights. And I'm also an active member of the Ypsilanti First Congregational Church. I grew up in Ypsilanti and graduated from Ypsilanti High School. Went away to college, got married, and decided to come back to Ypsilanti to raise my children in Ypsilanti because we decided we wanted to be in this community because it was the kind of diverse and welcoming community that we wanted to experience as a family, and so we did. For those of you that heard me speak when we were looking at the ordinances to be a welcoming community to immigrants, you heard me talk about about 750 calls that we've taken from people who are unauthorized to be here, 80% of whom have been either in detainment or deportation. They're all hardworking. They are not criminals. They came here for a better life, and believe me, although there are some who have said, can't you just give them a green card? The answer is no. Yep. It's a very difficult path, and there is not anyone on this city council that has not experienced the pain that we've seen in this community from what's happened to immigrants. And so, I stand here and I want you all to know that I'm very, very interested in this community continuing to be diverse and becoming more diverse. But do I want a community where there are some people who get here and get promised a green card because they have the money and because they can afford it? That's not where we come from. And the other thing that I am deeply concerned about is that this project or any other project needs to make a firm commitment about a portion of a development this size being able to provide a portion for affordable housing and a commitment to use local contractors and local people, immigrants included, that are very skilled at doing the work that needs to be done. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's been a very long night. Thank you for all sticking around. My name is Kyle Hunter. I'm at 109 Fair Street, 48197. I'm just going to keep it brief. I strongly recommend that the mayor and the city council vote no on this purchase agreement and give the community more time to have input, because it is very clear that they do not feel like their best interests are being kept in mind at this present time. Thank you.
I'm not Kaiser Soze and I don't live at 423 Emmett, but last time I came and spoke at City Council, you permanently published my address and name online, and I'm a domestic violence survivor, and that left me in fear for a while. And I think if we want to be friendly to migrants here, if a migrant that's not legally in this country comes and speaks here and gives their name and address, I'm sure ICE will be at their doorstep tomorrow. We really have to think this process over, but I don't think people don't know who I am. I volunteer at Growing Hope, so the mayor's got my name and address, and I used to work with Lois 25 years ago as a co-worker, so people know who I am. This development is even way bigger than I thought it was. I think I saw this one picture, I thought it was like 2 tall buildings. It looks like 17 high-rises, 7 stories or higher, and I am in shock. I mean, we've got high-rises on EMU's campus, and that's different. We have 2 high-rises downtown. This development is way too big for our city. It doesn't match at all. It absolutely does not match. And, you know, the council's asking some amazing questions tonight. Like, I really appreciate it. It seemed like, though, they should have been questions that were already asked and that you already knew the answers to before we got to the point where you were about ready to fly off to China. I think what's happened is, for 17 years we've been trying to deal with this property, and it's been like the thing hanging over the city's head. It's been awful. We've almost lost our ability to be a city over it. Was that with the timer? Am I done? Oh no, it's 2 minutes. Okay. Oh wow, cool. So I think that, you know, a new mayor and a new council wanted to do something, and so I mean, this is awesome. We attracted. Thank you all. I come in peace to you. I'm sure you're cool people. We could go have drinks at Sidetrack after if you want, and probably hang out really well. You're doing your jobs. Thanks for wanting to come to this town, because it's really cool, but this is not the right place for an EB5 development. We've got a special town, and you would take that specialness away from us if you came with 17 high-rises. This is not okay. You know, we need to do something different, we really do. And I have to say, this building smells so bad of mold, it's actually affecting all of us right now. The floor, if you look at the ceiling, all that white mold up there, it's bad. What we need to do with Water Street is eventually pay it off and build a nice big town hall that's safe and healthy for us to go to and have a conversation. I love you people, thank you.
Right now, so I'll take folks from the audience who would like to speak. Soon enough, Gail. Francis, you want to give her a mic? We're grabbing it. Sorry, Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Melky, I live in Ward 1 at 330 Chichester, apartment 409. Almost everyone that lives in my building is on disability, and most of them are suicide-making. Okay. Now moving. But I live in Chichester, and almost everybody in my building is living on SSI, and they make $700–800 a month. I make a little more than that, but I'm on disability too. I don't think this would be bad for the city. We need development on Water Street. The city is never going to have $8 or $9 million to clean it up. Yes, it'd be great to have a community thing there, but the reality is we can't clean it up. So let's add the stuff that we, let's tell the council what things we want them to include in the agreement. After they do this, I say that we vote yes, that it would be good for our city. Thank you.
No, it's very, very low tech. You guys are very low tech.
Good evening. Can you state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Brian Robb, 509 West Forest Avenue. All right. So this development sounds like a nice place to live, but let's be honest, it's not for us. It's not for the working class people that make up the backbone of Ypsilanti. And all this infrastructure that they're looking to put in there, it's great, but we are not going to see a bit of that. We are not going to see it in the neighborhoods where we live. No one's going to see it on the south side or anywhere else around there where it's actually needed right now, where the infrastructure is falling apart or not there. It's only going to go there in the case that it's going to increase property values so they can, buy up the land first, then increase property values in favor of gentrification. Let's see. Oh, yeah, so they talked about, this was a thing that could be easily missed, but they talked about the fact that investors are marketing Ipsy to other investors in China. That's a huge red flag for me, honestly. Another way of putting that is they are selling Ipsy. Selling us! When they get a foothold here, with the people who have all this money and power, so much more power than we have in an economy like ours, we lose control of our future. We've seen this in Detroit, we've seen this in Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor is getting gentrified to hell. And do we want to be like that? Do we want to be Ann Arbor East? I moved here with my partner, who actually grew up in Ypsilanti and then grew up lived through high school in Ann Arbor, and she can't afford to live in Ann Arbor where she grew up. We looked there. We couldn't find any affordable housing in Ann Arbor. We don't want to be that. Like she said, she's running out of homes. If we let this continue, soon we won't be able to live here either. We don't want to give in like Ann Arbor. A neighborhood that actually fights back. A good example of that is Boyle Heights in LA. They've done everything they can to make developers know that that neighborhood is for the people who live there and have lived there for generations. Like somebody said earlier here, gentrification starts with a foot in the door. I forget who said that, but that was a great comment that you had. We need to close that door. Once they get a foothold here, we lose control. And also, I just want to say, this paid trip to China, that's paid for by an organization that has ties to indirect ties to International Village. Like, there's a word for something like this, and that's a bribe. I'm done.
Good evening again, sir.
Thank you once again, Madam Mayor. Van Lovens, 115 Hawkins Street. I have a question more so than a statement. My question is, and I haven't heard it mentioned, what is the cultural capital going to look like if this project goes forward? First and foremost, what is the commitment? I've kind of heard it, but what is the commitment to recruiting minority contractors? What is that commitment definitely going to be? What is it going to be on paper? Latino and African American contractors, that's what I'm interested in, thoroughly. And somebody like me, after that thing is built, can I just walk through there at night, fist bumping, without problems? I'd like to know that. It seems to me that it looks like a development of the tale of two cities. We have this obelisk in the middle of our city where we're comfortable, and that could be fine, I don't know, I can't tell the future. And then you have this satellite community around it. How would it be thoroughly integrated? How, and if anybody could answer that for me, how would that happen and what would that look like? Thank you.
Thank you. One second.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Max Rickard. I reside at 525 North Adams Street, Unit 6. I just had a few questions that I think has been mentioned, but I just want to reiterate them because it's something that I think about every single day, and that's rent, and how I'm going to pay my rent. And it was interesting to me that the developers spent a lot of time researching and coming up with all these things that they wanted to say to us tonight, but I didn't hear a single word about rent. What will rent be for average a 2-bedroom place? Because if it's something that's skyrocketed and who knows what it could be, perhaps that it's more than what it is average here in Ipsy. What stops my landlord from increasing my rent to that? And what I want to know from City Council is if they do decide to move forward with this development, and if this International Village comes into fruition, what will City Council do to protect people like me and to protect other people who are more at risk? Because I'm speaking from a very privileged point of view where I'm able to pay my rent, but other people worry about it much more than I do. And so what I want to know is what will City Council do to protect people like me and people who are more at risk so that they can afford housing. So to me, that's the most important thing, and the fact that the development team couldn't put a single word in how much rent would be, because as far as I'm concerned, the investment is to make profit off of this community, and I can only assume that the profit can come from rent. And so what I want to know is what will their profit be from the rent that they get from this community. So that's something that has been heavy on my mind, and I know it's heavy on a lot of your mind because we all have to think about rent all the time. So just something, food for thought. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to address council now?
Karen Charter, 510 Homes. So I'd just like to encourage the council to approve the purchase agreement this evening and start the process. I would also encourage the council that as you walk through that process, if the development isn't right for Ypsilanti, that you walk away from it. I think having the Water Street millage provides us a better position than we were in when the letter of intent was entered into before the millage had passed. I think there are opportunities, and I think it's the council's obligation to explore and encourage or even demand a commitment to affordable housing encourage or demand or require the use of local residents in the construction, possibly even partnering with the skilled trades union to provide job training for construction jobs. The one other thing, there's many things that I think are of concern, and that the council will do its job in looking at those. But the scale of the development, I think it can't dwarf downtown. It has to be balanced with the community. It has to fit in with the character. And then I would not support any type of local tax abatement for the project. I think Water Street has a long history. It's, we've been in different positions with it along the way, and I think there's been some real positive movement with the millage that will give the council some leverage and maneuverability. I do think going through the process and working with the defined process, with the purchase agreement, more conversation, I would suggest or encourage the use of study sessions, so it's not just done in public hearings, so there's more opportunity for really taking a longer look at some of this. But, so I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Then just two quick things. I would like to thank the city for their text message system, where I get a text anytime something is noticed. I appreciate that. And then Councilman Murdoch, I appreciate your communication to the neighborhood. Yeah.
Thank you. Who else wants to comment? Big hug. Hey. Oh, so close.
It's lifelong. 401 West Michigan Avenue. I can't remember the name of the professor. I think it's important to use every resource and every knowledgeable person in our arena here to make anything we might do, and I don't mean only this possible development, but anything moving forward, and conform to things we know now that we maybe didn't know in previous decades of development. When we were watching the presentation by the project manager earlier, I was struck by the sense of the well-lit at night International Village. Light pollution is a really bad thing. If we are going to move forward in any arena, even as downtown as it exists now, I can tell you that it disrupts sleep patterns. I can tell you that it does not make for less bird crime. I can tell you that I've done the reading on this, and I can tell you also that years ago I read the groundbreaking work by an Eastern Michigan University professor on this topic. So obviously somebody might have to find that person's name. I don't remember his name, but we have a resource at EMU for groundbreaking knowledge about light pollution. When I ran the International Student House for the Ross Perot Business School at University of Michigan, there was a marked increase in problems once they put in 24-hour lights, and a marked decrease in calm and peace in the neighborhood. And it didn't do anything positive, really, and I'm sure that it was not energy efficient. So now that things like rolling lights, I forgot what they're called, graduated lighting exists, where I had some storage in Saline a few years back. It was a state-of-the-art facility, and it had, as soon as you'd walk by one row, all the lights behind you'd shut off. As soon as you advance, some lights come on. And so not just this development, but anything we do from now on in the city, I hope we will pay attention to light pollution, because I'll tell you, as a baby senior, sleep is at a premium, calm is at a premium, and just getting rid of the night space through too much lighting, it really is not what it's cracked up to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to address council?
Hello, this is Desiree again. I actually have more of a question around community benefits agreements. My experience with community benefits are that they are something that is put on paper and not necessarily followed through on. And so I would wonder about what has been some successful development that this group has done or that they know of other groups similar to theirs where the community benefits were actually held, were actually responsive to what the community needed, and were not just kind of there to appease the community in order to get things signed.
Thank you.
Hi, Mary Garboden, 1123 Pearl Street. I'm a homeowner, and I first want to say that gentrification is real and happening in Ypsilanti. Ypsi has been my home for the past 10 and a half years. First as a renter, and then I purchased in 2009. And I was able to because of the crash. It served me well as a homeowner. What I love about Ypsilanti is the openness, the history, the grassroots culture here, our diversity, and I feel like we're made great by the people who live here and love Ypsi. I care deeply about the fiscal health and sustainability of Ypsilanti, and for that reason I voted for the Water Street millage measure, and I was so relieved that it passed. Because it passed, I feel like we have time to find a solution that we all feel good about and that is true to the spirit of our community and that is accountable to the voices that we are hearing tonight and in the broader discussions around affordability. I don't believe that International Village is that solution, and I urge council to vote no on that. However, I think you're not going to vote no. And if you do, I ask the council members to each comment during discussion about what you will do about affordability. Will you require that as a condition to move this forward? I want to know plainly whether or not you will. Thank you.
My name is Finn Bell. I also live at 1123 Pearl Street. And I kind of just showed up to go to the farmer's market and ended up here. So I'm totally dressed inappropriately to be addressing a city hall, but what else? So I strongly support what people who are way more eloquent than me have already said about race in Ypsi, about immigration, the disparities in immigration that this is a part of. I moved to Michigan in 2013 to start a PhD program at the University of Michigan. And I totally fell in love with Ypsi when I was looking for housing the first time I was here. I moved to downtown Ypsi from Denver. When I left Denver, it was undergoing incredibly rapid gentrification. People's rents were literally doubling and tripling to where you would go to renew your lease and they would cost twice as much as it had been. And a lot of this was fueled by outside development, and much of that was international outside development. The rent in my neighborhood, it became so bad that everyone I knew was moving out of the city. Literally everyone I knew. When I last visited in 2015, I could not recognize my own neighborhood, and I knew no one who lived there anymore. All of the renters and all of the longtime Denver residents had been displaced by young white people who wanted to smoke pot and ski. I love Ypsi, but I've also watched it change even just in the short time I've been here. I'm not a long timer. When I'm in Ann Arbor, I constantly hear Ypsi being slammed and dismissed, and I would often talk up Ypsi. We joke about being Ypsi boosters who have matching Grizzlies, hoodies and go to the football games. But then I suddenly kept finding other graduate students moving to Ypsi and wanting yoga studios and wanting babos and all of those things. And I realized, what a part of the gentrification I was, right? So I think it's abundantly clear that the citizens of Ipsy do not support this development plan. I think that's been very clear throughout the night. I know that many of us in this room strongly supported the millage, specifically because we are invested in this community, and we want to be able to make wise decisions about how we develop this community if we do. We want to make those decisions that work for all of us. And we can do so much better than this, and many people here are working to make sure that happens. I take the statement by the developers that global capital will eventually come for us as being a threat. I hope everyone else who knows anything about global capitalism and neoliberalism to recognize that. Ipsy becoming like all of those other gentrified cities is not progress. We've given the city the extra money that it asked for to address the Water Street debt. For the city council to then go through with this agreement against the wishes of Ipsy citizens is outrageous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Casey Adams, 456 Ballard Street. Excuse me. So, I just want to highlight something real quick, and that is a universal truth right now, is that cash rules everything around me. For any of you who were here yesterday, someone came up here and was like, oh, we need to have this investment, you know, isn't that just how capitalist development works? Well, like, yeah, that's the whole problem. I want you to think about all this, like, I heard like, oh, the city doesn't have enough money. Forget about that. We got a lot of people in here who could work and fix the property, right? Like, the resources are there. Like, we could plan it all out. Like, forget about the money for a second and just think about like, what the reality actually is. Like, give me a shovel. I don't want to work in a kitchen making food for like rich white people I never see. Give me a shovel. I'll work for the people of Ipsy and fix that place, you know. So, straight up, this development is like class 4. Like, if you think about who wants this and who doesn't, people who own property, who are like, oh yeah, we want a lot of rich customers in our city. Yeah, like, we can make a ton of money off this. That's the whole thing. It's like, oh yeah, we want an investment. What's an investment? That's an investment for profit, right? You think about the renters who live here, we don't have any of that business. It's like, well, I don't want my rent to go up. I can't barely afford it like right now, you know? So, another point. City council, man, I'm like convinced at this point, it's full of snakes. Like, they don't care about me. I'm certain of it. It's like, they just don't have my interest in mind. They don't care about the poor people of Ipsy because we don't have any money, right? That's what it's all about. It's like, we don't have any money. They want the money, right? Their support base is rich property owners, business owners, people who have capital, you know. I didn't hear the developer say anything about affordable housing. I heard, oh, you know, we can just work out the affordable housing later. But think about it, the mayor took affordable housing off the agenda. People had to put it back on. Amber wanted to have it on the agenda, and like, she had to fight tooth and nail for it. The Human Relations Commission had to fight tooth and nail. You know, they're having like, this trip to China, like, I don't even know what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe I don't want to know. I'm sure something's happening though. You know, the investors could say, you know, we don't care about affordable housing. We want to make money off of this. By all means, if they can't make money off of it, that's what they're going to do. So, the city council represents the interests of business owners and exploiters, not us. Our power's in the streets. I'm not here to ask nicely. I'm here to outline the situation. The people have the power always, so you better go about it. You know. If poor oppressed people with nothing to lose but their change get mobilized to stop the city's plans, there will be hell to pay. So, I want to highlight one more thing. Salvo el poder, todo es ilusión. Except for power, everything is illusion. So think about it. And what I say to that is all power to the people.
Hello, thank you. My name is Brett Zuner. I live in the 300 block of Oak Street. I wanted to read some excerpts from the United States Government Accountability Office's report to congressional requesters on the EB-5 Immigrant Investor Program, entitled Additional Actions Needed to Better Assess Fraud Risks and Report Economic Benefits, like job creation, which seemed like a very questionable and gray area, maybe purposefully vague in its definition. So according to the Government Accountability Office, they state that For example, the methodologies used by the United States Customs and Immigration Services assume that all immigrant investors approved for the program will invest the required amount of funds and that these funds will be fully spent on the project. According to our analysis of the EB-5 program data, there are fewer immigrant investors who actually successfully completed the program than were approved for program participation. Moving forward, hold with me. USCIS officials said that they report EB-5 program outcomes using minimum program requirements because these are the required economic benefits stated in law, and that they are not statutorily required to develop a more comprehensive assessment of overall program benefits, meaning that they're not going to go beyond their means to actually investigate what the economic benefits are, and that in a whole excerpt of this was entitled that USCIS cannot reliably use its methodology to report program outcomes and economic benefits. And then moving forward, the legitimacy of investment entities is another issue, and then uncertain source of immigrant investor funds. So according to the USCIS officials, it can be very difficult to verify the sources of immigrant investors' funds, and such verification difficulties could pose fraud risks and national security risks to the program. For example, USCIS officials told us that some petitioners may have strong incentives to report inaccurate information about the source of their funds on their applications in instances when the funds come from illicit and thus ineligible sources, such as funds obtained through drug trade, human trafficking, and other criminal activities. Not to say anybody here would do that, but just the fact that this program, and the reason why bipartisan congressional representatives are against this program, is because it expressively lacks the comprehensive design to address security risks and issues of fraud, especially with how money has to be taken out of China to be invested here because of strict rules in China. I will send this report to all of you. It's 58 pages. I suggest everybody reads it so we know the program that we're endorsing. And then also with the American Center for Mobility, we're going to have very sensitive technologies from across the world in autonomous driving. It's located at that facility, and this program may enter into national security risk because of that.
Thank you. Who else would like to address the council? Good evening. State your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Preston Johnson. I live at 409 Olive Street. What I've heard tonight leaves me feeling that the pitchman is downplaying the importance of the decision, what the true importance of the decision tonight is. It's not exactly a bonding agreement. Okay, and you say you're going to have 10 permanent jobs. So, okay, are we saying retail and janitorial jobs for this site for millions of dollars of investment for a place where none of us can live? Okay, that doesn't sound like a cooperative space. You're saying that there are going to be construction jobs to employ people here. Then tell us that the construction is going to be swift. Okay, so how does that qualify as an ongoing job? Once it's built, it's over. Okay, and we're a small town in Michigan. Why are we being shown slides of Manhattan, a place where no one can afford to live anymore? I think this is underscoring our concerns of displacement for what might be coming for us. And saying that Ypsilanti is an asset, like we have something that we can sell to someone else. I find your comments that we are a welcoming community in this context to be a manipulative move, comparing millionaire investors to desperate refugees as though we should welcome them with the same open arms. That's an insulting appeal, and I urge you to vote no. Thank you.
Good evening.
Katie Clark, 430 South Adams. I don't know if y'all saw the same presentation that I saw, but their presentation left me with the distinct impression that they are out of touch with the Ypsilanti that I know, the Ypsilanti that has showed up to be here over the last 2 days. And the way that they gave their presentation also kind of led me to believe that they weren't really listening during the first public comment period. The fact that they've been on their phones periodically as we're speaking now, some of them are on their phones right now, leads me to believe that they're not listening now. I don't really think that they're taking our concerns seriously. One of the things I picked up on them saying, they said, we're gonna make this a place where we're welcoming people to Ypsilanti. That's a key word in there, because the people that are already in Ypsilanti don't need to be welcomed to Ypsilanti. They already live here. So what I think is that this development is not going to address the needs of people that live here. It's very explicit that it's going to bring other people here. So do we want to sell the largest lot of publicly owned land in a way that's not going to do anything to address the issues that we've been bringing up over the last 2 days? I don't think so. The last thing I'll say, I really appreciate that you want to go home, Amanda, but the reason that people are clapping in between is because we have had very limited opportunities for interaction and public comment due to the fact that it has been very hard to get this public hearing. So people are clapping and snapping and prolonging everything because we need you to hear us.
Hello, my name is Devin Leatherman. I live at 300 Jarvis Street. I have some questions and then a brief statement. Questions. Does this abstractly described development agreement get voted upon? By whom is it voted? Who is responsible for negotiating terms of the development agreement? Does the council have any input after tonight? Also, I want to reiterate that once the PPA is signed, a community benefits agreement would not be applied to this purchase or development plan. Many speakers last night and tonight have demanded that the PPA be postponed until an affordability plan and CBA are enacted and approved. We've been through this before with the discussion of the North Park property. However, not everyone here had the privilege of attending that meeting. Please don't simplify this decision or treat us as if we are stupid. I need City Council to be as critical, if not more critical, with this decision. We want transparency. When you say, this doesn't bind the city, who is the city? Is it staff or elected officials? With smaller projects, we have asked, but thus far failed to ensure that developers will hire local firms and tradespersons for their construction. I want percentages. Hiring a smattering of local help does not fulfill those ends. Also, to my ear, a safe, walkable 24/7 community on Michigan Avenue means increased police presence, which fails to increase my support. At least we know where those increased tax revenues will go. I, as a voting and mobilized citizen, would disapprove of almost any agreement reached within the current bounds of this project. But, as a disenfranchised person, I've been beaten to the cold reality of neoliberal policy and decision-making. If you do go through with this project, I implore you to aggressively defend IPSI, but also know that a vote yes on this purchase agreement, as it stands, is a vote against you and your crew for me in the coming election cycles. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. That's good, that works.
I'm just gonna hold it. Okay, so,
Can you say your name and address for the record for us?
yeah, my name is Crippled America, and I live in Ypsilanti. I've been here for 5 years, and I don't really have anything to add too much other than to say that, call me self-destructive, but I visited the Ypsilanti discussion page last night after the meeting, and I saw a comment that was just disturbing to me because it was basically saying that they believed that this was already won because one side was emotional and one side was logical and reasonable. So I would just like to say that when you're making this decision, please just recognize that emotion does not negate the severity and the validity of what these people are saying. And basically, I just would urge you to vote no, and I support everybody who's a part of Defend Affordable IPSI. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for still being here so late. I'm really grateful that this development has offered a catalyst for our community to speak to each other. My name is Erica Munoz. I live in the Huron River watershed. I am appreciative that this development has, like I said, provided a catalyst, but I don't think that this is the time for us to say yes to do a purchase agreement at all. I think that this is a time to agree that we have a wicked issue on our hands, and we've known that for a really long time with Water Street. It's not a new thing. This being a new development offers a new opportunity to design a platform that can systematically and equitably engage and empower people who are already working on existing efforts in the city. They said they would put in their short that I saw very briefly in one of your slides that you would put 4.5 million, I believe it was, towards a community center. That's great. But I think that there's more time for us to think about if you're going to invest in a plan that's already there that, as many people have expressed, is contradictory to the design, the scale, and the needs of our community, that you could take the time, instead of putting forward a plan that you've already drafted without our input, that you could put that into hiring a firm that's leading the entire globe in designing different sorts of ways of participatory engagement with citizens, so you're actually empowering what's going on. If you're investing in Ypsilanti, we are an asset, but part of that asset is our people and the skills and all the good people doing good work. We're focused on different issue areas, we're working class, we don't have time to take care of the things that maybe we could if we were paid to sit around and dream up a plan and pay people to design and engineer things. Maybe we would have already raised the money ourselves. But we are doing more than that to take care of ourselves and each other. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that I appreciate this interest, and I get that it's a valuable thing, and it doesn't have to be valuable just to this group that's sitting right here right now. 2 years later, when I worked at Beezy's, 2 years ago, there was 2 other gentlemen from Troy who mysteriously had no information that were going on, and they wanted a tiny house village on Water Street and pumped me for all kinds of information as a planning student at the time that I was happy to share with them about how much was going on. So I'm just trying to explain that there's definitely other investors, other interests, and the EB5 program is definitely shady. Also, the point that I also want to share is that I brought these flowers from Water Street, and I'm just trying to say that the peace that you can achieve and experience by being there in that place now is missing from this conversation. And I think that saying no and allowing more time to figure out how we can work together to actually engage people in a participatory design process is much worth it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah!
Mr. Shane, I have a point of order. So, I realize that we did not do the opening resolution. The opening and the closing? But we didn't do the resolution for opening. Okay, just making. That's for the purchase agreement. Okay, just making sure, point of order. Okay. Don't worry, you're okay.
Barbara Zmick, 314 Maple Street. I've heard a lot of versions of no in the room tonight. I've heard some people say absolutely not. I've heard people say, well, if we move forward with this agreement. I've heard some people say, well, you're probably going to do it anyway. You're definitely going to do it anyway. Once you do it, this is what we want. You know, there's all this discussion in between. I don't believe this train should even leave the station. I think this is rotten to the core. This is not what we're about. This is not what we want, and it shouldn't happen at all. I think this whole visa program, we know it deep in our hearts. This is the core issue here. That we shouldn't be giving into this. This is what we stand for here at Ipsy. So vote no.
Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Resolution to close the public hearing. Mayor Pro Tem Brown, you have that item. Yes.
Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti that the public hearing to approve a purchase agreement for the sale of approximately 36 acres of the Water Street redevelopment area with International Village Advisory LLC be officially closed, and I so move.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brown, seconded by Councilmember Vogt. All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Closing the public hearing. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. So it's whatever time it is in the world. And now it is our chance to introduce the purchase agreement. Mayor Pro Tem, will you please put that before us?
Resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the City of Ypsilanti entered into a letter of intent from International Village Advisory LLC for the purchase and development of the remaining 36 acres of Water Street on May 23rd, 2017. And whereas the letter of intent specified creation of a purchase agreement within 120 days of the presentation of the letter of intent. And whereas the International Village Advisory LLC intends to redevelop the Water Street redevelopment area with a multi-use development that will enhance the street-level pedestrian experience, enhance the adjacent natural and recreational features of the property, include multimodal transportation options, and visually interesting architectural and landscaping elements. And whereas the City Council of the City of Ypsilanti has the authority to enter into a purchase agreement for the sale of the Water Street redevelopment area and may impose conditions within said purchase agreement. And whereas the purchase agreement limits the time to create a development agreement and sets forward conditions and requirements of the project. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council directs the mayor and city clerk to enter into a purchase agreement for the sale of the approximately 36 acres of the Water Street redevelopment area with International Village LLC. Further, be it resolved that the Ypsilanti City Council directs the city attorney and city staff to negotiate in good faith a development agreement for the development of the Water Street redevelopment area with an international village. And I so move.
So moved by Mayor Pro Tem Brown, seconded by Councilmember Vogt. So now it's time for a discussion, deliberation, further questions for our staff, our legal team, and the development team. So what do we got?
It was raised up what the rental rates would be, if you had any idea of that at this point, or the cost of the condos.
To answer your question in general terms, rental rates would be between $1.40 per square foot and $2.15 per square foot. Cost of the construction, or the condos, would be around $200 to $220 a square foot.
How many square feet in square footage?
What's the monthly rent?
Wayne, can you also just repeat what you said one more time?
So it's hard to give a range for such a big development, but $1.40 per square foot, if that is doing my math, 800 square foot apartment, that would be
1120.
1120, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
$2.10, that would be $1,700?
So the $2.10 was for the condo, you said?
No, that's a range.
Okay, 140 to 250 is the range for the rental apartments.
$210, as programmed now. And the condominiums would be $200 to $240 per square foot.
How many square feet?
It varies. I think the smallest unit is 800. The largest unit is around 1,600.
So between 800
They
and
vary.
1,600 square feet. Great, thank you. Other questions from City Council?
That's almost $500,000.
I have a statement that I want to make, and it's related to something that Amber Fellows raised during one of her speaking engagements. You know, she spoke to Representative Peterson, who told her a story about seeing a large gathering like this 20 years ago when we had the non-discrimination ordinance. And Amber, I was the co-chair of that campaign, and I stopped my life for 7 months to pass that ordinance. And we didn't have one meeting like this, we had 6 months of meetings like this, where horrific testimony was given about LGBT people to first the Human Relations Commission and then City Council. And the part of the history that Representative Peterson may not have shared with you was that the Human Relations Commission got it wrong. The Human Relations Commission sent a recommendation to City Council to not pass a non-discrimination ordinance, that there was no need, there was no evidence of discrimination against LGBT people at that time. And the City Council had the leadership and the sense to see past the emotions.
Oh, she's going there.
Now,
Hey, we need to have order. LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender.
thank you. You know, I understand that Amber, Kyle, and Kayron are on the Human Relations Commission, and that their request for the meeting yesterday was their independence, and it was fabulous to have the meeting yesterday and all the testimony today as well. Since I'm a chronic insomniac, I don't even mind losing the sleep. I will say that they are making a similar mistake to what the HRC made 20 years ago. They are choosing to be against something, which gets a lot of short-term energy, but it doesn't accomplish much.
Against gentrification.
And what we're doing here is we're seeing protests against something that is, I believe, the wrong effort for them to put the energy. What I didn't hear from anybody today talking about affordable housing was anybody speaking about the Affordable Housing Task Force.
Nobody cares about that.
Okay.
You're addressing me, I'm addressing that.
You need to respect council, just as council respected all the listening to people speak. We will not tolerate people calling out. That would be an effort at being for something, not against something. What I didn't hear anybody talking about, well, no, there was a couple of mentions, and I'm proud of that, is that the senior affordable housing project that is currently ongoing, going to be talked about on Wednesday. That's also very important, and very something that we could work for, not against. I encourage City Council to see past the emotions and show the leadership that they did 20 years ago. When they decided that the Human Relations Commission was in error, that there was a need. We have a need on Water Street. And there's a lot of questions about this project. There's no doubt about it, okay? And is it going to be a perfect project? Probably not. The perfect project does not exist, okay? The question is this a project that will meet the needs of Ypsilanti, be a good endeavor for the developer, and enhance our community? I believe it is. And I want our city council to show the leadership to pass the proposal we have before us at this stage.
Paternalism.
Thank you. I want to make one comment in response to, there was a question that was brought up by Commodore Desiree, I think, was about the question about what she's seen in other communities about community benefits agreements. So people have been talking a lot about that, timing, things like that of community benefits agreements. And in my, attending workshops and conferences to learn about them and learn about the best practices, I think that what we are working towards a community benefits ordinance potentially as the city of Detroit has done, but I think there are many places where what she has observed, or what I've learned too, is that they are hard to enforce as their own. So what I think that the staff has done for us and put forth in this purchase agreement is that the development agreement is basically our version of that is a binding version, unlike how many community benefits agreements are. If we're able to pass an ordinance, like Detroit has done, that will be a potential way, but I think the observation, I just wanted to agree from what I've studied from other communities, is that it is hard for a CBA on its own to be an enforceable thing, which is why putting it into the legal documents as the part of the development agreement, those things, those characteristics, is the way that staff presented this to us, so that it would be the most legally binding. Councilperson Richardson?
Yes, I too have a statement following.
Turn your mic.
I had it on, I turned it off. I think I was turning it on. following Council Member Bashir's talking about being a responsible council. The last time, talking about 20 years ago, I want to say that we don't have to go back that far to, we're talking about an irresponsible human resource commission. I would like to just go back to 2002-03 when we had an irresponsible council. That council voted for, please hold your applause, because if you interrupt me, I might lose my train of thought, and I don't want to do that, and you don't want me to do that. So please hold your comments and hold your applause. That council entered into a purchase agreement with a developer, and that purchase agreement, the developer chose to back out before there was a development agreement, and that purchase agreement cost the city $700,000. That was irresponsible on our part, and I literally thought one of the council members that was very much in favor, I thought he was going to have a heart attack right before me, because it wasn't. I can't say, and I'm not saying a total no to this project. I saw and I heard lots of things tonight that I do not like. I heard several things that were absolutely stoppers for me, but I think we need to delay a vote tonight. I don't think we should have a vote. I think we have people going to China. I think we need to let them go to China. They worked very hard. And there's a lot of, I know there's a lot of feelings about the work that they did to get the money and the trip to China. I say yes, go to China, but let's not pass a purchase agreement until they go and we hear back from them. That trip was originally scheduled. They said in their presentation that it was delayed because their trip was delayed. Let them go to China, let them come back and tell us what they saw, and hopefully that everyone that is going to China will go with an open heart, open eyes, open ears, and with a heart open towards Ypsilanti. We have heard 2 nights in a row from our people, and it wasn't just about, I was hearing beyond affordable housing. I heard that they were concerned about Ypsilanti and what this would do to Ypsilanti. I don't think that we have enough information. I don't have enough information to vote on a purchase agreement tonight. I don't think that this entire project was presented to council in the right way. I asked for 3 months for a report on Water Street, and all I kept hearing was, something's in the works, something's in the works. Had we heard when the question was raised, can we have a report on Water Street, had we heard about this project and then began to talk about it and began to hear from the community, began to feel the community on this, began to get some answers for ourselves on this, then when it was presented for the letter of intent, we would not have just blindly voted for the letter of intent, but we would have been voting on knowledge that we had, that we had learned over the period of time that whole letter of intent and all that working was going on when it had been a request for us. We also need to get we need to make sure that our desires and our residents' desires are heard. Community benefit agreements, they do work. There is an ordinance that goes with them, and they do work. Yes, maybe some maybe in some places they have not worked, but it depends on how they are worked. Things work because you work them. Some things don't work because they aren't worked. And so if we have a CBA, then it's up to us to work it so that it works on our behalf. And I think that we need to have things in place. I listened to the analogy last night of the young man that gave the analogy of a young man and a woman having a relationship, a friendship, but he wanted to take it further, and so he asked her, would you have relations with me, go take it further for $1 million and then $1, and we heard what he said. I want to put it this way, using that same analogy of a young man and a young woman. The young man wants to take the relationship further, but the young woman says, no, not now, we gotta wait. And the young man keeps pushing and pushing and pushing, and she keeps saying, we gotta wait. And so then he finally says, well, I'm not waiting, I'm gone. I feel like if he really wants, if the young man really wants the young woman, he will wait. If the developers really want to come to Ypsilanti, they have the right attitude, they have the right purposes in mind for this development in Ypsilanti, then they will wait. They will wait for us to hear from the trip to China. They will wait for us to hear from our residents. They will wait for us to develop the community benefits. They will wait until we are ready. And I don't think that we should need to be pushed into this. That was the thing that I really heard, even more than affordability. I heard that our residents felt that they were not given the opportunity to really speak, to really have an input on this project, and that we were rushing. And I don't think we need to rush. So I say that we need to put off the vote until we come to delay it. I'm just saying delay it. I'm not saying vote, I'm saying don't vote tonight, I'm saying delay it until we have everything in place that we can go forward. And not only just because we want to or because council wants to, but because we have done our due diligence, and I don't think we did. And there were several things, the way things were presented in the presentation tonight that were a stopper for me.
Will you be willing to expound on some of those things and some of the remaining questions you have? I'm curious what those are.
Well, one of them was that things could be sold. And I have seen developments that once they were sold, they have gone completely down to the pits. It starts out all nice and everything, and then a few years later it's sold to someone else and it goes down. And then it's sold again and it goes down. And it's sold again and it goes down. That has happened over and over again. I've seen that. As I look at it, I see that I don't see the 100 feet that we were promised or around the river. I think that we are giving away our prized possession, which is our riverfront. I don't see that it would truly be open for our residents to go in and come out. And I heard that from some of our residents that came up and commented after they saw the pictures. I will allow someone else to speak, but that's where I am.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from council?
Well, there's so many possible directions to go with this. We've had so many comments. I appreciate hearing the many comments, including those for or against. There's always something to be gleaned from anything, even if you don't agree with it initially. I particularly appreciate the insight someone had, the lady who talked about lighting concerns and how the mechanisms to cure lighting.
Light pollution.
Light pollution, that's the right phrase. We've had this discussion about light pollution in the past, but that kind of thing is the kind of thing that our planners and staff would work with the developers if they didn't propose it themselves towards the development plan, and the planning commission and so forth would work on that. But it's good to have in the front of our minds those kinds of ideas. Nobody on the council table disagrees with the goal of trying to help with affordable housing and low-income housing. We've been literally the leader in this county and region in doing that for many years.
Well, then vote no.
That has not relevant to what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something else. We've seen the statistics, city of Ypsilanti, city and the township of Ypsilanti cover over half the housing of that kind in this county, and we only make up combined 20% of the population. We're way beyond the average in doing that. We're way out in front of that. Doesn't mean we can't do better. But we have to also keep in mind that there's a proper time and place for any particular project, any particular purpose. We can and intend to do, if the project is viable, a project on Michigan Avenue. It's been alluded to several times last night and tonight. We have other thoughts in mind. We've discussed affordable housing constantly, and we've discussed it concerning Water Street extensively in recent years with the 2 Herman Kettle proposals, which was overwhelmingly an affordable housing project. As by design, I would point out that although we've had many activists, concerned citizens here supporting making this an affordable housing project, that there was an enormous number of people in the Herman Kettles project who opposed doing that. I would say they vastly outnumbered the activists here tonight. And it has been a constant battle, a dispute between 2 different groups through the city for many years, specifically including Water Street. But the other thing we have to consider as council is all those other interests, all those other concerns that people in the city have. We've just gone through our 3rd millage election, very hard fought, bitter opposition over a 10-year period, fighting over how to deal with our extremely serious financial problems. And we had, finally, people came to understand that city council's been telling the truth about it, that it is as serious as we've been warning for years, this council and previous councils, and that it was essential that we pass that millage. I'd be willing to bet that 98% of the people who voted for or against that millage would insist that this council take the first viable project for Water Street.
Where are they?
They've been coming to meetings for years saying this. They've been blogging for years. They've been writing and calling us for years.
None of them were here tonight.
Excuse me.
I'm not going to debate it with you. I know what I experienced. I know the calls and discussions I've had even in recent weeks about it. I just helped with the campaign, knocking on doors and talking to people and hearing them talk about this thing. They may not be activists for their ideas, but I would say that anybody in this council who does not vote for a viable project for Water Street is going to have hundreds of people actively fighting against them in the next election. Hundreds of people in each ward. Because I think all those 1,544 people who voted for the millage and the 867 who voted against it would just go right through the roof if this council did not follow through with a viable project. This is a viable project as far as we know at this point. By design, this process is an extended process. It's meant to have a give and take over several different periods. It's meant to work through some of these questions and not try to do it all at once. That's why I'm not concerned that this is rushed. I think it's a normal process. And I think we're at the normal stage of this process. Someone said they didn't have confidence in our staff to work these things out. I have tremendous confidence in our staff by experience of 7 years on council, working with them. I think, and with council members, I think we're fully capable of having honest discussions in detail with the developers and their representatives, and finding ways to reach a mutual agreement, some give and take, it won't be perfect for either side, to make progress on one or more of these issues. I don't know which one it'll be. I don't know which one it will not be. But we can't make such an extremely critical project depend on one issue all the way. Maybe we'll get part of this, maybe we won't. We'll get something else for the city. But it is not something we can hold up logically or legitimately for any particular special interest group. I'm go a little further with this too. Councilmember Richardson, I remember in the past we've had discussions about the village, or when we had the streetlight assessment issue, she and others, including myself, talked about people who they knew about, or had somehow came to our council meeting and with tears in their eyes sometimes saying, I can't afford to pay a millage for Water Street. I know it's important. I'll go broke. I'll lose my house. I'll get evicted. I can't pay for my meds. Even a small streetlight assessment. These were people like those of you who've talked about your own problems. They have problems too, paying their taxes, paying for things if they have to pay their taxes. The same situation. They can become homeless too. So they need a project in place, paying taxes, to get rid of the Water Street millage as soon as possible. That's a different special interest group, but they have exactly the same interests, concerns, and consequences that they have to deal with if we go the other way, the way that you folks want. How are we supposed to decide that? Those are two very difficult things for all of us up here. But they're very real. So we will work on it further. We'll try to get a little improvement from your concern while still getting a project done that deals with those other kinds of concerns. Last but not least, the village passed for Water Street finally, but nobody up here represented that it was a cure for the city, or that they gave us endless time to just wait for the perfect 100% on all issue kind of project going forward. Those don't exist. They don't exist. And there's no one lined up outside the door here, figuratively or literally, with the next project if this one doesn't work. So we want to work with the developers to see if we can get things just right for both sides. That's going to take some time. It takes some trust on your part. I know that's hard to ask for, but you have to understand that we have the same concern you do. So we need the time to do that. That's something that needs to be worked out carefully over time. There's financing issues, there's engineering and architectural issues, all these technical things, as well as just getting all the feel of things right. So that's what we need to do. But voting no tonight has nothing to do to further any of those interests. Not a single one of them. It doesn't help. It would, in fact, destroy what you want, you activists out there who said, say no. If we say no tonight, there's no chance to change things and make it better. We can't get an affordable housing down there if we tell them no and they walk away. We need to have the time to do this correctly. That's what voting no tonight is about, or next week or some other thing, depending on what we do with Ms. Richardson's suggestion. We need to do this the right way, work out the best we can for all the people of the city. But I guarantee you, if we do not approve an option like this that is viable, so long as it looks like it could be viable, people who say no, I am going to wager, are not going to get reelected. Not the people who see us, the people who say no.
Thank you. Other comments or questions from council? Councilmember Murdoch? Okay. Other? Councilmember Robb?
Yeah, I was not ready for the long speech portion of the evening. I still have some questions. Can I get Ms. Arnett and Mr. Machine back to the microphone? Just to put this in context, the last big development we dealt with was the Herman Kittles project, and that was $12.5 million. It was 25 times smaller than this project here. But the information that came to us in the council packet was, they talked about unit size, they talked about square footage, the square footage of the building, things like that. It seems like the developer has a lot of that information now. You read about statistics of apartments and things like that. Did staff get that beforehand, or are you just as new to this information as I am?
I am as new to this information.
Okay, that's pretty troubling to me. Is it troubling to you?
At this point, no.
I've had the good fortune of being able to pull up some of Ann Arbor's development agreements, and it seems to me that the developer agreement is being sold to us as this holy grail magic piece of document, but when I look at like Liberty Flats document, they talk about you will build storm sewers and water mains to our specifications. You will leave these heritage trees in the development area. They don't talk about affordability. They don't talk about solar or green or any of those things. I mean, they are really generic and very plain. And I guess how would we ever have a development agreement? I use Ann Arbor as an example because Ann Arbor does a lot of big developments, not $325 million developments, but they do very large developments, and if their development agreements don't have things like green energy or things like that in them, would we be breaking new ground with that, or are there other communities in this area that have development agreements that have that, or would we be pioneering stuff? Because, like I said, this development agreement thing has sort of been sold to us as, oh, we can get that in a development agreement, but I don't see those items in other development agreements to our neighbors.
That's a good question. The parties have an ability to contract them.
You go a little closer to the mic.
The parties have an ability to contract to the terms that they negotiated and agreed to. And so while this may not look like other development agreements in existence, as long as we maintain and keep a vigilant eye to make sure that there's an enforcement mechanism to make sure that we can hold the other party responsible if there's a violation of the agreement, then that would be our concern. But yeah, I don't think that these type of development agreements are common, to answer your question. So we would have to be vigilant in whatever terms that we're concerned about as far as local hiring or green energy or affordability, that there's a way to make sure that that's enforceable in the future, and that's what we need to make sure.
If I can add to that, a lot of those projects also have other forms of incentives. So typically in a brownfield agreement, through the Act 381 work plan, you would find these terms. So in going through taking Liberty Square, for example, I being on the Brownfield Authority, the job creation mechanism was created through the Brownfield agreement. If we're not doing a Brownfield project, it'd be natural to put it in the development agreement. So I think if you went through multiple projects and you would find different layers of agreements. So you have the development agreement, for instance, Ann Arbor is using that to pass their PUD. So if you take a planned unit development, which most of these projects are, they're outlining their PUD terms. Or the infrastructure. Infrastructure is often within the development agreement. However, most of these projects also have significant have significant incentives attached. Incentives is usually at the point where that negotiation occurs. So you want TIF back. In order to have TIF back, you will have X amount of jobs created for this project. So I think, we could pull those agreements and see that it would be more simplified, which would be my recommendation anyway, to have it in one agreement rather than multiple agreements.
So what is council's role in creating that? I mean, when you look back on this, I'll give you an example. So we had a meeting on 5/23 and we gave direction to create a purchase agreement, but we didn't really have a working session to talk purchase agreement. We didn't have council input purchase agreement. Theoretically, we could have called you, I suppose, or sent an email, but that's really not a public forum or a collaborative session like council. So what will council's role be in this development agreement? Or will we it'll just come to us in December or late November and that'll be it?
I think there's two ways that I could recommend going forward. One would be council sets that today as part of the resolution to either create a negotiation team or to establish working sessions as a better means to allow for conversation.
I want to jump to a legal question here for Mr. Duchesne. Okay, so I brought this up somewhere earlier today and it was brought up again in audience participation. Okay, section 8B is very troubling to me. So it reads, in consideration of the purchase price provided in this agreement, purchaser agrees that it will not seek reimbursement of brownfield eligible costs or activities from Act 381 tax increment revenue generated from the capture of real and personal property tax revenues generated from the increase of value of the property. The second sentence says, if purchaser does so receive such reimbursement, purchaser agrees to pay the price or purchase price of $5,000 per acre.
So that goes to the that goes to the enforceability mechanism I was talking about before with the development agreement. So we can throw all the terms we want in here, but we got to know what happens if those aren't followed, and that's what this is.
Right, but I guess, you know,
and to be honest, I think we'll have to enter into a brownfield agreement anyway if that were to happen.
Exactly, that's the point. So I guess you know, we have $24 million worth of brownfield eligible reimbursements for this project.
Okay.
They are $80 million short. Okay. When this was sort of sold to us back in May, at least it was my understanding, was, you know, the way I was selling in the future was, oh, it's $4 to $8 million worth of environmental cleanup because of the EB5 visa program. They're not eligible for all these other tax credits. And so that's what sort of made this attractive, is the fact that we would not be laying out all these tax incentives into the future like the 27-year brownfield.
I don't disagree.
For the, well, I'm feeling the old bait and switch, because now all of a sudden, with that clause in there, that's, you know,
So I guess the question is, if the clause, if the second sentence is what concerns you, and that sentence is removed, I think that puts the city in a worse position, because then we don't know what happens if that were to be violated.
I understand.
Does that terminate the...
Right. I appreciate that there is a penalty there.
Sure.
But it's a $120,000 penalty for
So it's not severe enough.
for $23 million worth of tax credits.
Sure.
And, you know, like I said, I guess, and that is a deal breaker for me. I mean, I would like to see this progress further, to have more discussion, see where this goes. However, that is the deal breaker for me, and I have very, you know, even the mayor, when I brought this up earlier prior to public hearing, she made the comment about they say they're not going to go after brownfield tax credits, but that's not true. And the fact that they can, obviously, to get those, the city would have to allow them.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, I just, you know, I would. That part troubles me, and I would like to see that second clause removed, or, you know, you're right, you want the penalty there, but...
Right, if you remove it, you put yourself in a worse position.
But because council can give the project, but like I said, the $120,000 penalty for $23 million is not severe enough for me, and I'm uncomfortable with that.
But Councilmember Robb, can I just clarify your intent here? This says there will not be to seek reimbursement of brownfield eligible costs. Are you good with that concept? That was one of the appealing things?
Someone from audio of the public hearing talked about that too. It's like I said, the way this progressed is we had a meeting in May, and then we had this meeting now. And things have sort of evolved over that time without, you know, enlightening council on that. And we have gone from, they are not eligible for this because the EB5 visa program, to they are $80 million of gap funding, and we have $23 million of funding that could fill the gap. And so, like I said, I do not want to see this to be a brownfield. I do not want the city to treat this as a brownfield. I don't know how we codify that. However, $5,000 as a punishment
is... Well, it's $5,000 an acre, so it's...
Oh, right, it's a $120,000 penalty for $24 million or $23 million.
So I concur, and so Mr. Duchesne, I'd like to ask you that question. So how do we better codify what I think the intent of that clause was?
I would increase the amount. You can remove it, but then it kind of leaves up in nebulous what happens if that doesn't happen.
Right. I mean, how high do we increase it? I just, you know, if we raise it to 50,000, then it's 1.8 million, which is still not. Yeah.
It's a good question. And maybe the purchasers can espouse us to that.
Beth, do you have any thought on that? On how to codify that, which was an expectation?
Oh, no.
Okay.
So your question is the amount, or, you know, or how to ensure going forward. The purchasers are here as well as the council. I think they would be best to address this.
Okay, but let me clarify too. The council would have to approve that anyway.
That's correct. I plan for contingency.
The council would have to approve that to happen anyway.
So it's a plaque, you're talking, I believe it's called Act 381 work plan, is that correct? Or Act 381 agreement, or it's been a while since I've been to do it.
Act 31 tax increment revenue.
Well, there's an agreement between the Brownfield Authority and the taxing body. And then, sorry, this is something I reviewed for Urban Kittles, so, can you? Okay, please do. Talk about the city's involvement in it.
Right. So as far as if a brownfield were sought, and that's, I think we should turn this over to the development team to speak on, but if a brownfield incentive were sought, then an Act 381 work plan would have to be presented to City Council for consideration. And then there's a local jurisdiction agreement that's required before it goes to the County Brownfield Authority. Obviously, this property qualifies. We've already approved the umbrella plan. The reason that I believe Dan and I, brought this forward was we were trying to set floors of minimum expectations. So actually, if you go back to the RFL that was presented in May, it said that they would not be seeking brownfield reimbursement, or they would be making an offer of a higher purchase price. So because that came out of the original discussion, Dan and I, Mr. Duchesne and I set the floor for it within the purchase agreement. There's 100 different variables, but we took things that were discussed from the meeting and put them in. It wasn't meant to egg on the discussion of $1,000 versus $5,000 per acre. At the council meeting, I believe at least on the right side of the table, it was clear, a dollar just doesn't work. If it's 500, that would be better than $1. That's what I heard. That's where we set a floor. We're not trying to replace council's judgment. We were trying to set minimums to go forward with. Again, to open the door for discussion.
Yeah, but I don't see those as floors as much as, from our perspective, we see that as a floor. But from their perspective, I would see that as a ceiling. Oh, we've signed a purchase agreement that says $5,000 an acre or $1,000 an acre. That's the ceiling. And more to the point, I keep bringing up the Ann Arbor development agreements. I have yet to see one where it talks about a purchase price in here. So we keep talking about all these things we're going to continue to negotiate that do not exist in purchase price or development agreements from other communities, or at least Ann Arbor is what I'm pulling up because they do a lot of projects and they're close by. And so I'm nervous about what we're being sold here on the development agreement.
So not all those properties are owned by the city of Ann Arbor.
I understand, but I know that.
Would it calm your nerves if we called it a different name?
No.
Well, we can call it whatever we want, but we can also put whatever terms in the agreement that we're in negotiation.
Okay, I'm going to jump to a different subject here, and then I'll give up my time for questioning or long speeches. I'm a process guy, I'm a numbers guy, and one of the things that's frustrated me so much in this is, and I told this to Mr. McClary after the first time this came to council, of all the letters of intent that came to us, this was the most vague of all time. We approved the letter of intent based on, we want to put stuff there, we want to spend a lot of money, and we said, you know what, let's explore this. Well, now it's come back to us, and there's still not information in here, and there's information on here from a developer standpoint, but there's not information here from staff input. And I tell this story all the time. I'm an engineer at Ford. I design parts, they get tooled, they go into cars. And if I went to my chief engineer and said, I need $2 million for this, or I need money for design stage, he asked me how much it was, I was like, oh, don't worry about that. We're still thinking about this. That wouldn't work, and we're sort of there. And my concern here is, we understand how much money this could generate in taxable value.
I don't think we do understand that.
Okay, well, that's a great answer. That's even a better answer than mine. Well, that makes me worry even more, because if we don't know how much this is going to generate in taxable value, and then You know, if we gave up $23 million in brownfield tax credits, what does that do to the revenue we take in?
But, okay, hold on.
We're not agreeing to that. We're agreeing that if they seek those, then the price becomes $5,000 an acre.
If we approve
Okay, first, I want to take it back to your original statement. This is a between 30 and 36 acre development plan, which is significantly different than the proposals you saw from Herman and Kittle and also the proposals that you saw from Parks and Rec, right? Those were 2 acre parcels that were easy to codify. I explained on May 23rd the same thing. The developers approached us with interest that was brought forward to council for consideration. Now, in order to start talking about the development, it had to come forward to council. It was not a lot different than we have the proposal for Michigan Avenue. That's not our property, but that's going to go to the planning commission first because they have full-scale drawings and they're ready to go to MSHDA. The development process when you're presenting to MSHDA is a lot different than when you're presenting to city council. We are not at the point of making a decision about final units. I can't provide you a taxable value because you don't have the information the assessor requires to give a taxable value. So what I provided in the RFL is if you take a minimum of $150 million development and you never built on it, which is not the intent, here's the minimum number for the tax. So I've provided you the absolute minimums. I can't provide you the maximums, and the developer is not going to go into full-scale development until they know there's some consideration from the city to move forward. If you make a decision tonight to not move forward, the development stops. If you make a decision tonight to say we want to engage into further discussion, you're going to be provided with that information. But the engineering studies it takes to do a 30-acre development, we are talking about several $millions.
No, I understand. And forgive me if I gave the impression I was expecting to have this down to the numbers. But if you remember when we did have the Michigan Avenue Herman Kittles development, you know, we were able to assess based on square footage and a base rate on that. I mean, and I guess I would say that you having said that the information about the unit size and price per square foot is just as new to you as it is to me, maybe some of that information exists or there's, I'm not looking for the high end of the value of the property or anything like that. What I'm trying to do is just protect the city and make a good judgment based on how much tax revenue we think this could generate. And then the question becomes, and I don't think we've thought about this in the past 15 years, what will it cost us in city services? Now we are adding city services to 36 acres. Okay, and the unfortunate thing is, as people have been saying, we've been doing this for 15 years, does anyone have that number? No. And that's crazy. And that's troubling, and it's too late for that now, I suppose. But are we working on that? Are we trying to develop that? That's not a question to you. That's a question out to the ether. But the whole idea is we're trying to put a business case together here to say if we generate this much in tax revenue and if we have the possibility of giving this much back in brownfield tax incentives, because even though the thing says that they will not pursue them or they will pay us $5,000, we are just average people up here. We are not professionals, and a lot of people are going to feel pressured to say yes to $325 million because who says no to $325 million? And so when someone comes back to us in a couple months and says, you know what, man, this $325 million program won't go forward unless you give us those $23 million in brownfield tax credits, you're going to get a lot of other people who are going to say, you know what, I can't say no to $325 million. And that's sort of the frustration I'm having up here. And like I said, I'm with you. I want to see this progress and talk about this stuff. But, you know, we went from having one meeting to a second meeting where we're executing a purchase agreement. And there's a lot of information in there that, you know, maybe I overly conservative when it comes to the numbers, and I'm afraid to make a decision, or whatever you want to accuse me of. But we've gone from one meeting to the other to make a decision, and I'm not entirely sure we have that much more information than we did 120 days ago.
So, as...
Mayor, I have to move to extend the meeting.
So what time?
1 o'clock. I mean, depends. Yeah, it depends if you want to finish your...
Move to extend to 1
Is there a second?
1 a.m.
All in favor? 1 a.m. How do we get dinner? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Councilmember Robb,
What's that?
or, sorry.
Okay, so to address not your last comment, the comment before, what we can do though is again set floors and then plan for a contingency if that floor is not met, if the obligation of the floor is not met. And so similarly in this purchase agreement, they're essentially agreeing to invest in what would turn out to be a true cash value of $150 million. And if they don't, then again, there's a follow-up if that obligation is not met. So that's what we can do. We can set floors and we can set requirements, and if they're not met, then we need a plan to figure out how to deal with it if they don't. I agree with that.
I'm sorry, I'd like to hear from City Manager McCleary on some of these questions that have come up.
Sorry about that. I think maybe we're looking at it the wrong way. Instead of looking at it in terms of how much tax revenue could be generated off this property when it's developed, and kind of following Dan's philosophy, looking at if they decide that they're going to pursue brownfield TIF credits or what have you, the purchase price of the property goes from being $1,000 an acre to the amount that we owe on the property, so that we pay off the debt, and then they can go ahead and apply for the brownfield tax credits. I don't know if council would have concerns with that option, but that way we are out from the debt on that property, and then they're free to pursue the brownfield credits, which may be twice as much as what we owe on the property, so it may be a win-win situation for both sides.
That's an interesting, compelling thought, especially because the millage goes away once the debt is released to the citizens.
Right, but if I could just comment on that, because there's been a lot of comments on the Facebook world, even the public comments. We cannot pay off the debt until May 1st, 2025. Okay?
That's correct.
Right, but I don't think people understand that, because these are municipal bonds that are only callable every 10 years. That's the next time we can call them. So I think what Mr. McCleary said is pretty interesting.
There's bond payments.
No, exactly, but they're not callable until May 1st, 2025.
Correct.
So we will, regardless of how much we earn in revenue, the debt doesn't go away. The millage can dissolve and be rolled away, but that's, the primary concern is what we have. And he brings up an interesting point. They could pay us for, if we gave all the money back in credits or something like that, they could pay us for that end payment. We would still continue to make payments out of that. And so, depending on if this was executed next year or the year after that, they went after brownfield tax credits, we would spend 8 years times $900,000 in bond payments, and at the end of that 10 years, we would not have the money to pay the $9.9 million. So I like where he's thinking, I like where he's going, but
I think we can make language to make that work. Essentially, the impetus of what the idea is, if we receive payments under that language, it's up to us to spend that money accordingly. That's the other comment, based on your comments.
And I guess the last thing I'll let you go is, okay, in clause A of that, it talks about if the $150 million floor is not met after 3 years, there's $20,000 every month for ever, or until they complete it, or, I guess I don't understand how that's enforceable. Because if something happens where they only raised $150 million, or whatever other alternative financing they had goes away, and they end up with a $150 million development, and that's all they have, I guess they pay us, the hotel pays us. I guess I don't understand how that becomes enforceable.
You sue them and collect a judgment. That's how you enforce any contract, Councilman.
All right. And I guess the comment about someone in the audience about if the property, if the development doesn't happen, the entire development doesn't happen, why doesn't that revert back to us? And I'm not entirely sure that should be the development agreement. That should be the floor tonight. And so, you know, I would like to think of language to get that in here tonight. Because if we're setting floors, you know, that's...
Where would you suggest it?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer.
Well, what relation?
Well, it's just the whole idea. The whole idea is if the development, you know, if the complete development does not happen, and somehow this land gets ceded back to us, or...
So it could be an additional part of A under item 8. Under
you know, like I said, I can't think of what would happen to this project if bankruptcy occurs, or, you know, some natural disaster occurs that this project doesn't go forward. You know, for example, you know, your force majeure there could mean that they don't have to get the $150 million, but if some catastrophic event happens, you know, and the project doesn't get completed, you know, we should get the land back. You know, it's the same thing that happened.
I have to think of how to word that.
I understand, but it's the same thing we did with the Thompson block about giving up our parking.
Right, that was...
No, right, it was not the same thing, but the whole idea is we have to protect the city's interest, and we're giving away all this property, and if it doesn't happen close to the way we want it, we want it back.
Right, so we're talking about 40 acres, and there's a lot of defining issues that have to put in the language.
No, I understand, but that's the floor. So that's you know, like I said, that to me, if we're gonna, that's not part of a development agreement. That's part of the floor for the negotiations for a development agreement. That's it.
So do we have to put those suggestions in the form of a motion?
That's correct.
He would have to give me language that he likes that.
Yeah, that's a whole other level of legal language. Can I just make a note before I forget it that I think there's an error in that same A typo that is on line 4 where it says purchaser shall provide compensatory payments to seller. Should be instead of to purchaser.
Sorry,
Line 4 under A under 8. Purchaser is twice in there. It should be purchaser seller. Although, I mean, I'd really just like to pay themselves, but paying us, I think was the intent of that.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so Brian has suggested, I think, is a great suggestion that came from the audience, but that takes a bunch of legal language to figure out how to put in. So what would your recommendation at this time be?
Well, I think we have a few. I think there's a. Sorry, I'm talking to Mike. There's a few things I think we need to hear from the developer on, as far as what their input on it is. That
Okay.
makes sense.
Let's do that. Beth, can you recap the questions for them?
I can try.
Can one of you recap the questions for
The
them?
first one is a discussion of their intent with brownfield TIF reimbursement. The second one that pops to mind is a floor as to a clawback provision if development is not made. And the other one was an increase, the other.
The one that Manager McCleary suggested.
That's correct, an increase in the, essentially, obligation to the city if they do request a TIF. Those are the three that come to mind.
All right, I'm going to try to answer those. No opposition to a clawback. As far as purchase price, can't negotiate that right now. Until we see something from the city. And the intention was that would be negotiated during the
Development agreement.
we're going into.
Yep.
There was one more.
Yeah, okay, wait, what was the other one? We're trying to... The intent around the local brownfield. So not the transformational brownfield, just to remind the local TIF brownfield.
So you want to know now if we're going to use it.
Yeah, you shared that your intent was new market tax credits, really, which is what you'd expect for a project like this, which is a federal thing, and potentially the state transformational brownfield.
Yep. So those are the priority that we we wanted to go after first, but if you're going to hold my feet to the fire, I would have to request the brownfield TIF at this point. I can't say no if I don't know, if I don't need it. So I can't say no at this point.
And so Manager McCleary, can you repeat what your suggestion was of the if brownfield TIF then amendment or edit?
Well, if my understanding of the purchase agreement is correct, we are greatly reducing the price of the per acre of that property in exchange for you not pursuing the brownfield credits. If that is not the case, if you're looking to reimburse you or remediation costs or what have you through a brownfield TIF reimbursement, then you're basically taking tax dollars away from the city. So why would we reduce the price of the property? That's basically my thought process. We should be looking to recoup the debt we have on that property and get rid of that debt in exchange for you being able to pursue those tax credits. And I don't know if it's $23 million you would be able to be reimbursed, but I would assume the length of time and the size of this project, it would be a sizable amount you would be reimbursed over time.
So your suggestion was, and that's what we want to get your reaction to, as a result of that, instead of in B where it says it's $5,000 per acre, you go for the tax credits, it's like the amount of the remaining debt instead.
That's a gigantic delta. So, or say yes, I can't say yes right now.
Yeah, sure.
But that is a big difference.
It's a different, yeah, very different.
I'd say that's different on both sides.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree. So if you were to force me to say, are you going to use brownfield TIF? I'm not going to say no. But I don't want to say something that I come back with a different answer. So.
Yeah, okay. You don't want to rule it out, you need to think about that, of course, further. Okay, thank you for that. Further questions, comments from council? Does anyone have something more? Okay, let me let Mr. Duchesne respond.
Just briefly, I think they did get a concession about clawback, correct? If there's no development on the property. Okay, so what I would say is throw a couple words into paragraph C. 8C.
C?
8C.
Okay.
C, yep. And then it would be inserted.
Want us to come back to you?
Yeah, let me
Okay, Councilmember Murdoch?
Yeah, I hope this isn't too disjointed and stuff, because a lot of things have been said over the past few meetings and so forth. But as we know, there's been a lot talked about how our community is supportive of class and racial diversity, and that's why I live here, that's why I came here, that's why I stay here, because of this community, and we need to reflect on that and maintain that. Now, we've had, since I've been on council, the last 9 years, Water Street has been the albatross, as it's been called, the nightmare. And we've been trying to deal with that for every year. It's become more and more difficult. We haven't had a lot of success in getting there. Now, this proposal here might take care of a lot of that financial stuff, but there is still a lot of things, I think, missing as we just had this discussion. Now, we're doing a contract negotiation at 12:30 at night around the table. It doesn't usually work out right. Now, I'm going to get this off my chest too. The process that we've had here leaves a lot to be desired. It hasn't been particularly transparent. It's been, rushed. We only got this this agreement on Friday, if I recall, and, need to deal with that. And, then the timing of all these events with the trip to China coming on the day after, or 2 days after we're supposed to vote on that. I mean, the optics of that is awful. I mean, all it looks like is a bunch of people going to take the junket and, be wined and dined by the developer. Not a good optic. So that's where we're at. Now, we've talked about community benefits and, various things we would like in the project, in a project. And the way the agreement's left it is basically, yeah, we got a paragraph in there that says, we'll deal with this later. Well, here's some of the things that I think need to be in there in terms of that. This will be the largest project in the city's history in terms of development, at least private project. I can't think of anything that would be bigger than this. It's going to impact the city greatly, and if it was this size, if it was an international village, it still would be a great impact. It's going to increase the number of rental units in the city by approximately 15%. And it seems to me that a project that's going to add 1,000 rental units should be able to squeeze in an accommodation for affordable housing component. And the contract, we've talked about local hiring, and of course that's very important to get the contractors and subcontractors to the degree we can to be from the local community. And obviously they're not all going to come from the city of Ipsy, but we'd like them all. We like to try Ipsy first, then Washington County, and so forth. And those contractors and subcontractors should be paid prevailing wage. That's what if this was our project, we would be required, the contractors would be required to pay prevailing wage. And the Spence brothers have done a lot of contracting work around and done jobs for U of M and others that require prevailing wage, so they're familiar with that process. In addition to that, the permanent jobs, as soon as we figure out what those are, which seem to be unclear, I think those jobs should provide a preference for City of Ipsy residents in their hiring, and those wages should meet our living wage ordinance. Now, as I said, those things I think we should be discussing there, and as it says, we have this provision in there, oh yeah, we're going to bring these up and stuff, but that reminds me of an old wobbly tune. Basically says, you'll get pie in the sky by and by. So you basically get all these promises, and when it comes to the time that's supposed to happen, oh no, we can't do those, it's gone. I don't think that's right. We need to get some of that stuff up front.
Thank you. Other questions, Council?
Oh, okay, so it's been a very long night. So thank you to all who are still here. So yeah, I have questions, and I definitely think that there were pieces that we're missing that, we haven't heard around, hearing from our community about affordability and sustainability and those terms not being used in the presentation. I'm concerned about, job development, the access to the river, and integration into the existing community and how our existing community members will be impacted. But to keep it brief, I also think that moving into a process so we can have that conversation full out, for me, seems to be an integral next step, to be able to ask those questions and have those conversations, to really see, if this is going to be viable for the community. I think to shut it down tonight doesn't give room for those questions to be asked and for them to give us those answers. It doesn't mean that this is a sure thing, but I do want those questions answered. I do want to be at the table to discuss those things moving forward.
Thank you. Ms. Ernett, and then probably also Wayne, and listening to what I'm hearing from what I'm hearing from some council members about specifically around the agreement and some other things that they're interested in ironing out. I'd be interested to understand any consequences if it had another few weeks at least to look at, ask questions, and respond to some of these to our, one of our early October meetings. But what would the consequence of that be? Is that a viable, if there was a postponement, for instance, tabling or postponement?
That's the development.
We'd have to make a motion to extend the letter of intent period.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm asking that question. If that is a possibility, or if that is not a possibility. Give him.
Okay. So let me tell you about my knee first. I had knee surgery 4 weeks ago, so I'm still licking my wounds, so to speak. This is a very complicated matter, and we can't possibly solve all of the issues that need to be solved tonight. We can't do it. I'm eager to get to the next step. And I, for one, will do my best to address all of these issues, but I don't know how we can do all of that tonight. As has been explained to me, it's important that Amy Foster have a purchase agreement that she can show the investors in China who are ready to disappear, as has been explained to me. The EB5 investors, although they like this investment very much, they'll invest in another development in another city if we don't get this done. So besides the EB5 investment, there are direct investors in China who are sitting on their money and will want to move on and invest it someplace else if it comes to it. So, as it's been explained to me, if we can't show them in the next couple days a purchase agreement that we've got the property under contract at least, I worry that they'll disappear. And that really will be the end of it, because without the financing from China, there's no funding for this development. So I'm eager to get to the next step. And we've got a lot of work to do. I acknowledge that there'll be some kind of reverter or clawback in the agreement. There may or may not be work to be done on the purchase price still. The one thing that is important to me, and there's only one thing that's important to me, and that's on both the buy side and the sell side. The only thing that matters to me is that there's a contingency in there.
It only lasts 6 hours before it dies.
Thank you. So if we can't, despite our best efforts, reach an agreement on the development agreement, then that'll
Wait,
be...
on the development agreement or the purchase agreement?
On the development agreement. If we, with your support, move on beyond tonight to the next round, and if despite our best efforts we can't reach an agreement on a development agreement, that's the end of the matter. The contract says that it just terminates. And if we have a development agreement that the buyer likes but the city doesn't like, the city can bail as well. And the opposite is true. If You have a development agreement that the buyer doesn't like, we can get out. So for me, the only thing that matters is getting past tonight and getting to the next round and trying our best to reach an agreement. And if we can't, then that's good. If we can't, then we've tried. But there are just so many issues, we can't possibly deal with them all tonight. And if you want to make some changes to the purchase agreement tonight, I'm going to have to have an opportunity tomorrow to talk to my client and talk to them about the changes. And my advice to them might be, don't sign the purchase agreement.
That was a threat.
Any further questions?
Developer cares about one
You
thing.
have a question for, while he's up here still?
Well, no, but it's in response to some things that he said, so I don't have, someone has a question for him.
Anyone, while the attorney is still up here, so he doesn't have to get up and down again, any other quick, anything? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilperson Richardson?
I felt pressure. And that if we don't do this right now, I didn't expect the questions and things that we were presenting that we wanted to happen tonight. I've been around here long enough to know that you cannot do those kinds of things sitting at the table. That's, and especially at 1 o'clock in the morning. But the pressure that if we don't sign this tonight, then it's not going to work. I don't like that pressure. And I feel that, when there's so many things that were brought up and important things that we want in here or want changed, and then to say we either have to sign tonight, agree to this tonight, or they're gone. And if they really want it, and want to be here, I don't think that would be so. I don't like that pressure.
Yes. Thank you. Councilwoman Sheriff, you leaning in?
I have a few unconnected miscellaneous thoughts. One is I've worked on not one, not two, but 3 campaigns to try and pay for Water Street. And I've knocked on doors in every neighborhood in the city, and I do mean every neighborhood. And in every neighborhood, I've had, and at 80% of those doors, maybe 60%, I've had the same question asked to me. Why haven't we done anything with Water Street? Why haven't we done anything with Water Street? Okay. And I'm new on council, but I'm old in the city, and I'm old in organizing, doing community organizing here, and I have to tell you, I'm pretty tired of the question. The second thought that I have is I negotiate for a living. I sell for a living, okay? I do this for fun, although it hasn't been fun the last couple of days. And I know when we're in a position, when we're dealing from a position of strength and when we're not. And I wish we were in a position of better strength here, but we're not. But we're also not at a deal-breaking point. What we're at is a corner, and we're deciding if we're going to look around the corner. And from what I've been told, and I want a lawyer to verify this, okay, is if we agree to this agreement at this time, it's pretty clear to us what the deal breakers are in this.
I have a decent understanding.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So one thing that's clear to me is that we're not going to be able to do anything tonight with this contract. Okay.
You mean in terms of editing?
Editing, yeah.
In terms of, yes.
Okay. We're not going to make any corrections that's going to solve our problems. The second thing that's clear to me is that the developer is on a very tight deadline. We knew that from the beginning, back in May. We knew this was a fast-track project. That was clear from council from day one. So none of us should be surprised at it. I agree with Councilor Richardson that I have big concerns about the sale aspect of that, of the property, once it's developed, okay? And I definitely agree with Councilor Robb about his concerns about those line items in the contract. But, Mr. Duchesne, can we address those, assuming negotiations go well, at the next stage? Or are we bound by anything in here if we sign this, if we agree to sign this tonight?
As far as purchase agreements go, this contingency for development agreement is the biggest openest hole for contingency. I'm sorry. Okay, so.
A little slower too.
Sure, okay, so. As far as purchase agreements for the sale of property go, this requirement that the parties enter into a development agreement is a very large opening for contingency, right? It's not the parties have to sit down and agree to the terms of a separate agreement in order for the purchase agreement to be enforceable. Parties can agree to terms in an agreement as they negotiate. So, if the parties do not come to terms of the development agreement, it says in the language, this agreement terminates. If the city council doesn't approve a development agreement between the purchaser and the seller, then this purchase agreement terminates. If we go in and negotiate essentially what could be the sale price of the property, I think, I'll explain this. The floor is there, but the floor is not nearly where we want it to be, and so I'm not saying that we can negotiate that term, but we can certainly try. Does that make sense?
I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
Okay.
Sorry, one more thing that pops in my mind, there might be another if not then that I can think of between now and then that might make that more palatable. I don't know what, I don't like to limit my creativity.
So we could correct these between now and the next stage?
Possible.
Okay. I'd like to hear from the developer if they are open to helping us correct those problems if we decide to move forward tonight.
Yeah, I mean, kind of been open to negotiation on the development agreement the entire time. The question is, how far can we go? And a lot of that can't be answered by me tonight, and it's not going to be answered by a 5-minute meeting. So it's going to be an extensive process, and I think we look forward to that. We've looked forward to that, quite honestly.
Okay, thank you. My last question is for Beth Arnett and City Manager McClary. Okay, so the information flow so far is unacceptable to both the community and to City Council. Okay, and if we decide to move forward, I would like to have like bi-weekly updates communicated clearly about how the negotiations and the studies and everything else are going. Is that something that we can expect? Because this last minute pop is not acceptable. It's disturbing to the community. It's frustrating for us.
I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Okay.
Mr. McClary, you have more to add to your
Yes, with the understanding that I have, nothing's going to happen until we have everybody back from this trip. But yes, we can definitely do it.
Can you speak a little louder? Can you speak a little louder?
With the understanding that that nothing's going to be happening until officials are back from that trip. But yes, we can definitely do that.
I'm pretty sure that the officials can communicate from us somehow from overseas.
I'm not.
Huh?
I am not, but what I can offer is a report on the overseas trip.
Yeah.
By that Friday.
That's fantastic.
By, I believe it's the 6th if anyone has a calendar in front of them.
And I like the tippy toe action, I gotta say.
I don't want to screw it up.
Councilperson Richardson.
Yes, I need understanding about if that whole exchange there repeated, because I couldn't hear some of what he was saying, and I want to understand clearly what you were saying.
Okay, the last part, just the last part?
Yes.
Okay, so what I was hearing from the audience and from city council and experiencing myself was that we, and you in particular, had been very vocal about asking for updates. And we had gone through the 120-day period with very little information, which is probably even generous to say, okay? And what I stated was that was unacceptable both to council and to the community at large. And that if we decide to move forward tonight, could we ask staff, being Beth and Darwin, to give us bi-weekly updates, and that's kind of arbitrary, but it seems like that's often enough, okay, on how progress is going with negotiating the contracts, with inserting the clauses that we want, with finding out if they're going to decide they want the, Act 31 money, all that stuff. Okay. Any questions about that?
No, I don't have any questions about that. But if I may, I don't want to go forward with this tonight. I think we need to set it up. The developer could not answer many questions. Well, I can't answer that tonight. I can't answer that tonight. I understand that, but there are just too many questions unsettled on both sides, and we need to go into step. And if this agreement is not such that it can hold water and go through, then I think that it might be the best for us. I think that I'm in a position that I don't want to see the city once again in a position where we make a decision and then we're sued, or that we have to pay the developer. And that's exactly what happened before. And I think we need to move cautiously and not be pushed or rushed. And that's what basically our residents were saying. Don't rush. My notes from last night, it was over and over and over again. Don't rush, don't be pushed. And I think that we would do well if they choose to pull out, they choose to pull out. I do believe, we got to know for sure that this is the right thing for us and the right thing for Water Street. And what I've seen and the design and everything, I'm not really sure that this is the right project for us. If it is, I will support it wholeheartedly, but there are too many ifs, ands, buts, and questions right now for me to go forward with this purchase agreement.
Thank you, Councilperson Richardson. Councilperson Bishop, queuing up. Anyone on this side? So I'll share where I'm at this point. I think there are a lot of questions. I think our trip will be a lot of questions, and it's our chance, we've talked about, to do sort of our own due diligence and our responsibility, that if something like this large is going to come to our community, that we really understand the context, the culture around it, the intentions of the people who are being involved with it overseas, etc. And I think that there are many remaining questions. But that said, as I think I heard from Councilmember Vogt earlier and others, this is that next step to say we want to find out more. And I think that is important for us to move forward at this time. I think one of the challenges with any big decisions in life is moving forward with imperfect information and feeling comfortable about that next step. And as the attorney for developers mentioned, the most important thing is the contingencies, and I agree with that. And when I've looked at where these contingencies are, I feel good about them because we will be able to get to all of those things that they have heard before this process in the last couple days, but heard from us that we care about. So those aren't new things, the things that are values in this community about local hiring and local contractors and living wage, etc. So that this is our step to sort of, as Councilmember Bouchard said, turn this corner. And that doesn't, to me, mean anything is a done deal, and I think the developers will be going back after these meetings and thinking for themselves, where are they and where do they sit with this project? So it's not yet a marriage and not really even fully an engagement. It's more the next level of courting, if we want to use that kind of analogies. I think when I step back, and Councilmember Bouchard, I appreciate you're talking about door knocking, because I've door knocked in the whole entire city as well, and heard from residents in the whole entire city as well. And I think that's our job, and is to listen in many different ways. And people, and I have seen through my 3 years, people come to council with large groups of people with strong and very valid perspectives bringing forward to us. And the Herman and Kittle development was a great example of mostly people coming forward to us saying, don't do this, and us thinking about how to listen to the community more broadly and saying, no, this affordable housing is appropriate. So we voted against a room packed full of people, many actually times over, around that. And so, as I think many of you, all of you, I would presume myself, have spent many hours listening and reading and writing and talking to people, both in meetings, but also many people outside of meetings as well. I think about, and I reread some of the community assessments that were pretty comprehensive community voice projects, like the South of Michigan Avenue assessment, which was door-to-door surveying of neighborhoods and focus groups and things. It's a few years old now. And I look at that and some of the other community assessments that have been really ways to bring in many, particularly underrepresented voices in our community, and over and over and over, they say jobs, jobs, jobs. And as I look at the issues and some of the core reasons for the rates of poverty that we have in this community, jobs, 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 and how jobs and availability of jobs and that access to opportunity relates to where jobs are, what jobs are available for people of different skill sets, experience levels, education levels, etc., and where jobs are as related to transportation access, how long it takes you to get there, how much it costs you to get there, how reliable your transportation is, and what kind of childcare you have to pay for, especially when you have to transport yourself pretty far to go to a job. So, to me, much of this comes down to the fact that we have an opportunity that I have not seen in this community in my time living here. My time living here, which has been now 15 years, to create jobs at really every people at every different skill level and education level. And I think that is an important obligation we have to our community. And one of the reasons I think that while we have lots of questions and lots to be further defined to see whether it is really a good fit, that opportunity to bring even 400 or 500 jobs is what many communities, recruit a factory for. Recruit, major employers to give that opportunity for more employment, because I see that as one of the root causes of unaffordability. And not at all to say we aren't working, in fact, later in this agenda, and on October 17th, etc., on affordability issues across the community, because they are crucial, and are crucial for us to keep marching forward on. But one of those root causes of affordability issues is also is a wage issue. It's about living wage, it's about prevailing wage, and it's about long-term jobs, it's about full-time jobs versus having to piece together 3 part-time jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think we have all the information. I don't think we will have all the information. And I think we look at the context that we're in to say this is our good faith effort, to say this is something we continue to explore. And there are plenty of things that we've heard tonight from one another, and that we've heard from the community that may make this not work on either end, like any relationship is. But I'm gonna, after much consideration, I'm gonna support us moving forward with this step at this time, so we could think and start working in earnest on incorporating and on how to incorporate all of those other core values that I hold most dear in this community, and I've heard echoed in the last couple of days our community, many in our community who are here, and many other in our community who are not here, and we have heard from and support, hold very dear. Councilmember Vogt and then Councilmember Richardson.
Gucci for mayor.
Yes, I would,
I'm sorry, he had flagged me. Can I go to Councilmember Richardson?
let me say this first, it may affect our answer. The concern about resolving things is in the language of paragraph 8. It says that if for any reason or no reason whatsoever, the development agreement is not approved before the closing date, the agreement will terminate. So if we don't reach agreement on terms for any of these reasons, with the other party, we can take no action, or we can say no, or we can fail to meet for any reason whatsoever, or no reason at all, if we don't actually sign a final development agreement by the closing date. There is no deal. So we don't have to know these things tonight to take the next step, in my opinion. It's not a legal opinion, by the way. That's my personal opinion.
Thank you. Councilmember Richardson?
Yes. I heard you and Councilmember Bashir talking about people commenting and, wanting something. I too have had many people say, what are you going to do with Water Street? And I've heard it a lot longer than you all have. But at the same time, with this project, I have heard over and over and over again, we don't want it. I don't know, find something else. And these are from people that did vote for the millage, and they're just saying they don't, they don't want it, they don't, And I'm not saying that I don't want it, but I also remember Ms. Arnett saying that anything that we already don't haven't passed, haven't enacted, that those coming in we cannot hold developers responsible for it. And so I'm saying we need to take time to get in place the things that we want, that our people want, that our citizens want. And so I'm going to offer a motion, whether it's second or not. I move that we delay the vote on this purchase agreement.
There's a motion by Councilperson Richardson and support by Councilperson Murdoch. Discussion on that.
I have a question for developers. What's the latest that they can do?
Can you use your mic, please?
I'm sorry. For the developers, what is the latest they can go without us deciding this? They said that earlier tonight. Okay. I oppose delaying it for the reason I said earlier. The agreement already covers this issue. There's no necessity, there's no purpose to delaying it. There's no benefit served.
Further discussion on that motion on the table? Hearing none, Clerk McCollum, can you please call, is there any clarity to the legal or anything?
We're in the delay. I don't know if it's postponed or
We do not move tonight. We want to say postpone, delay, or postpone. Okay, I was saying, I don't know if the word should be postponed, if it should be postponed, but you say what?
To a date certain?
I would like it to be, the vote to be after the contingencies that's going to China comes back. So that would be the 3rd of October, or,
So a date certain to the 3rd of October?
Yeah.
Okay, so the motion then is to postpone to a date certain to the 3rd of October.
Is that accepted by Councilmember Murdoch? That was accepted, so that is the motion on the table. Any further comments? Hearing none, Clerk McMullen, can you please call a roll on that motion to postpone to October 3rd?
Councilmember Bashir?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
No.
Councilmember Murdoch?
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson?
Yes.
Councilmember Rabb? Councilmember, I'm sorry?
No.
Councilmember Vogt?
You're not with a delay, no.
And Mayor Edmonds.
No.
The motion fails. There's 2 yes votes and 5 no votes.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
I would like to call the original resolution.
I want to make my I mean, I'll make this quick. Now's the time for speeches. I have no doubt that Attorney Dan Duchesne will do his best, give his best effort to negotiate the things we wanted in there. Unfortunately, we've already seen the pressure that if we don't do this tonight, this deal could disappear. They have that, they have, the sword of Damocles hangs over us with everything we do. When we go back and say, you know what, we want prevailing wage, we want affordable housing concessions, we want this, we want that, we want this, we don't want a brownfield, they have the pressure to say, we can walk away. You're right, Dan, Councilmember Rowe made the comment about we don't both agree on this, but like I said, I have great fears that anyone here has the backbone to walk away from $325,000 or $325 million based on principle when they are pressured.
Actually, I disagree, by the way. I think we'll be in a better position of power later on.
What was that?
I believe we'll be in a better position to negotiate later on. Right now, we're in a very weak position. Later on, the developer's going to have many more investors and EB5 people already invested and ready to move, and we're going to have a lot more power at the table. That's what I think.
I disagree also respectfully.
Who do you disagree with?
With Mr. Robb. With respectfully, I've been in some seemingly impossible negotiations that were under some with tremendous time constraints and some without. And people of good faith who really want to do the thing will find ways to solve the problems. If we don't, then this was never a deal to begin with. That's my opinion.
Move to extend.
On our first agenda item.
Move to extend to 115.
Wait, is there a second for that? Movement to extend?
We're going to vote on calling the question. Let's just vote.
Okay, there's a call to question.
I remove my motion.
Okay, call the question on the original motion. Mayor Pro Tem Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Murdoch? Councilmember Richardson?
As it stands now, no, it's not that I'm against the project, but as it stands, no.
Councilmember Rabb? Councilmember Vogt?
Yes.
Mayor Edmonds?
Yes.
And Councilmember Bashir?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Second.
Support. Yeah, we have someone who's been waiting for many hours.
What just happened? Wait, was that a vote to extend the meeting, or was that a vote on the purchase agreement?
What just happened?
Was purchaser to purchaser changed, or did we just go with the typo on purchasing? That's a very serious question.
Clerk McMullen, can you announce the results of the vote, please?
What was the vote on?
The vote was,
In the
4
mic.
yes votes.
Either.
That was on the original request. The resolution to approve the purchase order, it just passed. Okay, and now we have a motion on the floor to adjourn that was made by Councilmember Murdoch and second by... Was that you? Who was it, Rob? Okay. So,
We need a vote on the adjournment. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Murdoch?
You don't represent the people here.
Adjournment.
Voting for your... You're voting on adjournment. We're still in session right now.
Councilman Richardson, this is a vote to adjourn.
Oh, well, I needed to know, I need a question before I can vote on that. I heard someone say that someone had been waiting.
Someone's been
for something
waiting,
that's
yep, for
on
our
the-
next item since 7.
Which item is it?
What was the motion?
Which item is it?
I think the easement property on the Michigan Advocacy Program. No, sorry, it's the rezoning on 75 Catherine for PMD. So there's a rezoning item.
Did they know what they were doing?
Yes, to adjourn. Councilmember Robb. Motion to adjourn. Councilmember Vogt. Mayor Evans.
No.
Mayor Evans? No. Sorry. Councilmember Bashir.
No.
And Mayor Pro Tem Brown. The meeting will continue. There's 2 yes votes and 5 no.
Okay,
Can I revise the, I'm sorry, we revise the agenda?
yep.
Thank you.
So, Manager McCleary, can you, we know we have someone here for a
Can we,
rezoning item.
rezoning and the easement?
Do we need to still discuss the easement? Do we still have Bob Gillette here somewhere?
Bob Gillette's, we need to vote on the easement and we need to vote on the rezoning.
Look how happy the developers are. Woo, they'll sue us for everything.
CIA, Amy Goodman, Juan Gonzalez.
So I know that
What
we,
about the Bell Kramer testing?
we do the rezoning ordinance number 1294, then we close the meeting.
Hold on. Manager McCleary, I'm looking at the other items that are critical paths forward. One of them is the approved increased contract for the Bell Kramer neighborhood testing. But yes, we need to vote on that tonight. Beth Ernett. We need to keep moving forward on the Bell Kramer neighborhood testing approval. So,
Okay, that's fine. We call the question? We call the question.
okay, we next have this.
It wasn't even weight loss.
Okay, so we will hold the discussion on 15 North Washington, but we do need to move into the 75 Catherine Core neighborhood. Do you want to read that, please, Councilman?
Thank you.
Sure, resolved by the Council of the City of Ypsilanti, whereas the rezoning of 75 Catherine
If you're speaking, we need you to leave right now so that we can continue on, and our applicant for this rezoning can have his public hearing heard.
Whereas the rezoning of 75 Catherine is consistent with the goals of the city master plan, and whereas the size of the parcel will prohibit the development of this property to many of the larger industrial uses that are allowed in the production, manufacturing, and distribution district, and whereas the proposed rezoning will align the past zoning and history of the parcel, and whereas the proposed rezoning is appropriate for the current character and use of the property. Now, therefore be resolved that an ordinance to rezone 75 Catherine from core neighborhood to production, manufacturing, and distribution be approved. And I so move.
So moved by Councilmember Bashir, supported by Mayor Pro Tem Brown. So,
Good morning, Council. As we have a request for rezoning for 75 Catherine from core neighborhood to PMD. Historically, this property has been manufacturing. Actually, it's been manufacturing since before we even had zoning. So the zoning went through the Planning Commission back at the last meeting, and the applicant is here to speak